On our newscast tonight, to aid efforts to revitalize the economy and create jobs, some 6,500 people are granted special amnesty. These include major business leaders. Another summit between the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. has been set on October 16th. The core discussion will be on North Korea. And for 3 days straight, China devalues its currency to bolster its slowing exports, dealing damaging blows to Asian markets. All next on Primetime News. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday, August 13th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thanks for joining us.
The list is finally out for who will be granted amnesty on Korea's 70th Liberation Day, part of efforts to boost morale and revive the economy.
This is only the second time President Park Geun-hye has exercised her pardon power since taking office. And this time she pardoned only a handful of business tycoons. Our Choi Yoo-sun starts us off.
The list of more than 6,500 people granted special amnesty on Thursday includes people who committed petty crimes for their own survival and the owners of small and medium-sized enterprises. 14 of the people are conglomerate executives, and the only conglomerate head to make the list is SK Group chairman Choi Tae-won, who is serving a 4-year sentence for embezzlement.
The government has impartially selected 14 businessmen, including SK Group chairman Choi Tae-won, to either spare them from their remaining prison terms or lift certain restrictions in their sentences.
Contrary to expectations, neither Hana Group chairman Kim Seung-yeon nor LIG Next One vice chairman Gu Bon-sang were on the list, likely because neither of them met the requirements.
Among the business people, we did not include people whose sentences were issued recently, those who haven't served enough time of their prison term, those whose crimes were committed during the current administration's term, and those who failed to pay fines.
Also, no politicians or public servants who are in prison were pardoned. According to the Justice Minister, President Park Geun-hye had stressed that the Korean people should be able to relate to the latest amnesty, as she's aiming to help boost morale and revive the domestic economy. Prior to Thursday's announcement, President Park, who had pledged not to abuse her amnesty power, said that she expects the pardons to give ordinary citizens and small business owners a chance at a comeback. In pardoning the business leaders, the president said she expects the amnesty to help with efforts to revitalize the economy and create jobs. Aside from the roughly 6,500 people who were pardoned on Thursday, another 2.2 million people were either granted parole or released from certain administrative restrictions so that they and their business operations can get back to normal. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
In response, the business community has welcomed the move, vowing to take the lead in reviving the economy. But some experts question whether the amnesty is effective enough to do that. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
The Federation of Korean Industries said they will use the amnesty as an opportunity to focus on the economic revival and development of the nation. Still, some were disappointed with the scale of the special pardons. The Korea International Trade Association said it was smaller than expected, but added the answer to problems like growth, employment, and welfare lies within firms. The trade association also stressed the need for the business community to come together and foster a friendly business environment and create quality jobs. Experts also have high hopes the pardons will breathe life into the sluggish economy.
Thanks to the return of corporate leaders, companies will now be able to make swift decisions on investment and job creation. Also, as the pardons include leaders of small and medium-sized companies, it will help spur growth.
SK Group, whose chairman was pardoned, vowed to focus on creating jobs and expanding investment to help prop up the economy. Hanwha Group was disappointed its chairman was not pardoned, but pledged to continue to contribute to the economy. But not all experts were pleased with the pardons, considering the recent havoc surrounding chaebols, namely Lotte's family feud and the Korean Air nut rage incident.
Corporations say that without their leaders, it's hard to run the company. That in turn is admitting the authoritative role of their leaders. This goes against the government's pledge to reform the country's conglomerates.
Choy added it remains to be seen whether the pardons of businessmen will actually have an impact on the economy, as there's no evidence supporting a correlation between presidential pardons and economic revitalization. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
President Park will meet with President Barack Obama in October after her trip to the U.S. was delayed due to the MERS outbreak. With that, it's more likely President Park will attend China's War Victory ceremony, an event she's been contemplating due to Seoul-Washington relations. Our Hwang Ji-hye reports.
President Park Geun-hye and U.S. President Barack Obama will meet for a summit at the White House on October 16. It will be their fourth such meeting since President Park took office in 2013. On the agenda are enhancing the bilateral alliance and boosting cooperation against North Korea's nuclear program. The leaders will also touch on issues like the environment, energy, space, health, and cybersecurity. The presidential office of Cheongwade expressed hopes that the summit will open new horizons for cooperation between the two countries. The White House said President Park's visit will underscore the strength and breadth of the U.S.-Korea partnership. The South Korean leader had postponed her trip to the U.S. in June to tend to domestic concerns over the spread of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, in Korea. The outbreak killed 36 people, and the government came under fire for its lax initial response. The earlier-than-expected announcement of the summit is raising speculation that President Park could attend a War Victory ceremony hosted by China next month. South Korea and the U.S. have usually given a 20-day notice for presidential visits. The presidential office is expected to make a final decision on the China trip next week. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Pyongyang has called for an end to joint drills between Seoul and Washington with its usual bluster. This all the while remaining mum on last week's landmine blast at the border. Connie Kim has more on the regime's usual unilateral attitude.
North Korea has vowed to retaliate against an upcoming round of regular military exercises between Seoul and Washington, calling the drills a declaration of war. In a statement on Tuesday, the North's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea called on the allies to halt the drills and threatened merciless blows that could escalate into an all-out war on the peninsula. The statement also said the North is ready to counter any kind of war the U.S. might start, even a nuclear provocation. The warnings are similar to those issued by the North in the past. Seoul's defense ministry responded by saying South Korean forces would take immediate action to defend the country against any bullets or projectiles coming across the border. Seoul and Washington are set to kick off the 2-week Ulji Freedom Guardian exercise on Monday. The computer-assisted simulation exercise is designed to train South Korean and U.S. forces to deal with a range of current and future threats. The drills begin amid heightened tensions between the two Koreas after a recent landmine explosion that injured 2 South Korean soldiers. Pyongyang has yet to issue a response after Seoul's defense ministry concluded the North was behind the attack. Seoul has responded by resuming its propaganda broadcasts along the border for the first time in 11 years. It has also vowed further retaliation and continues to call on the regime to apologize for its actions. South Korea's defense chief will also discuss the matter with a visiting U.S. Defense Department official on Friday in Seoul. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
North Korea further fueled South Korea's anger on Thursday by using President Park Geun-hye's picture for its military shooting trainings. A day after the communist state showed that footage through its state-run Korean Central Television, the South's Unification Ministry condemned the regime's inhumane action, saying it eliminates the most basic matter and instigates hatred between Seoul and Pyongyang. The ministry called on the North to immediately halt such actions, saying it only reaffirms the regime's hostile nature, which will only lead to further isolation from the international community. And over at South Korea's National Assembly, lawmakers adopted a resolution condemning North Korea for the recent landmine attack. Also, the parliament voted in favor of an arrest motion for a former opposition party lawmaker accused of graft. Park Ji-won provides us the details.
On Thursday's full assembly, lawmakers adopted a resolution condemning North Korea for last week's landmine attack and urged the regime to apologize. It calls the attack a military provocation in clear violation of the armistice agreement that ended the hostilities of the Korean War. It also called on the South Korean government to respond sternly and swiftly to any further provocations from the North. Lawmakers also gave consent to the arrest of three-term lawmaker Park Geun-hye, who left the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy party earlier this week. Amid charges, he took nearly $300,000 in illegal political funds in exchange for influence peddling. The vote was conducted by secret ballot. 137 lawmakers among 206 present at the session voted in favor, enough number to meet the quorum of the majority vote of the members present. Before the vote, Park spoke to the full assembly acknowledging all the charges against him and said he's immensely sorry for causing the parliament and the public harm.
I will not give lame excuses. I will not hide behind immunity. I will not ask for a shield. I'd follow legal procedures, just like any other member of the general public.
Park's arrest was subject to parliamentary consent, as sitting lawmakers are immune from arrest while the assembly is in session. This marks the fourth time in the current assembly that lawmakers agreed to the arrest of a sitting lawmaker. Lawmaker Park is expected to be in court sometime next week, and his detention will be decided according to the result of the court hearing. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Leading figures from Korea, Japan, and other countries have called on Japan to honor the spirit of the country's post-war peace constitution. At an international forum in Seoul on Thursday, former Korean Prime Minister Lee Hong-gu and former Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama announced the 2015 East Asia Peace Declaration, calling on Japan to face history. The declaration, also signed by 95 other international dignitaries, said denying historical wrongdoings will only bring more conflict. The calls come a day before Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is set to announce a statement marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. China has devalued its currency yet again for a third straight day. The yuan was pushed down another 1.1% against the U.S. dollar on Thursday. That means it's been lowered a total of 4.6% since Tuesday. The pace of decline was tempered, however, after the central bank said there was no basis for a further currency depreciation. According to the China Foreign Exchange Trade System, the guiding rate for the yuan now stands at 6.4010 for $1. The devaluations follow a slump in Chinese exports that dropped 8% in July from a year ago. And given the gloomy economic data creating speculation that China might take further action to tackle a possible slowdown, the move is jolting Asian markets, and Korea is one of the hardest hit. For this report, we turn to our Han Da-eun.
Korea's credit default risk hit a 6-month high as China lowered its currency value for 3 consecutive days in an effort to bolster its slowing exports. The market research firm Market said Thursday the credit default swap premium for Korea's 5-year foreign exchange stabilization bonds reached 63.1 basis points, the highest since February. That's a 22% jump from last month. A CDS premium is often used to measure the creditworthiness of a company or country. Among the 53 nations surveyed, Korea had one of the highest risk premium increase rates, second only to Thailand, in the period from Monday to Wednesday, after China announced its currency devaluation. The risk increase rate was especially high among emerging Asian economies, with Malaysia trailing Korea with a 13.5% jump, followed by Indonesia, Kazakhstan, and the Philippines. Market watchers say Korea's risk premium hike points to Korea's heavy dependence on the Chinese economy, especially on China-bound exports.
35% of Korea's total exports are China-bound. This means the two countries share an export structure in which China's economic troubles could become Korea's. The sharp increase in the CDS premium could also hurt foreign investor sentiment to a certain extent.
The CDS premium increase rate was relatively low for other developed nations, including the U.S. at 3.9%, the U.K. at 2.8%, and Japan with one of the lowest figures at 0.6%. Handan, Arirang News.
The risk from China caught the attention of Korea's monetary policymakers, but that was not the only uncertainty they had to take into account. The possible U.S. rate hike hinted them to keep the key rate steady for now. Shin Se-min brings us this report.
While gauging the impact of China's currency devaluation move, Korea's central bank kept the key rate unchanged at a record low of 1.5% for the second straight month. Following the unanimous monetary policy decision on Thursday, the central bank said it is taking a wait-and-see approach, with concerns mounting over the devalued yuan, as China is Korea's largest export market.
It's difficult to say which is more important when it comes to competitiveness in exports and the possibility of capital outflow. We will have to see how the situation turns out.
The top central banker added that external factors present higher uncertainties than domestic variables, as they have shown little signs of improvement, while consumer sentiment in the country is inching up and the industrial output rebounding. Experts say China's move might have earned Korea some time.
With China adding concerns to the global financial market, the U.S. Federal Reserve may adjust its timing for increasing its base rate.
A rate hike from Washington may add more pressure on the BOK to raise its interest rate. But experts point out Asia's fourth largest economy has not been able to reap significant benefits despite the 4 key rate cuts it has carried out so far. Given the mounting global economic uncertainties, market watchers say another possible rate cut could still be in the forecast. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
For the top international news headlines, we now turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
After shaking up the financial realm, China is rocked this time by 2 major explosions. 3 cases are dropped against Julian Assange, and Jimmy Carter's shocking confession is one of our stories.
Well, Sun-ho, let's start off in China. How extensive is the damage there?
Yes, well, as of now, at least 50 people are reported to have died, including 12 firefighters, and more than 700 have been injured by blasts at a warehouse in Tianjin. Hospitals are already overwhelmed with people seeking treatment after being wounded by the explosions. Chinese President Xi Jinping has announced a thorough and transparent investigation into what happened. For the details, we turn to Kim Ji-yeon.
Videos show fireballs shooting into the sky from the 2 blasts in Tianjin late Wednesday. The explosions were so large they could be seen from the city of 15 million by satellites in space. Authorities have yet to identify the cause of the blast. Many believe the first explosion was at a warehouse of the company, Tianjin Dongyang Port Ruhai International Logistics. The shock waves were felt kilometers away and sent broken glass flying from shattered windows and fish tanks.
We were sleeping at that moment when we suddenly heard a massive explosion. After the second blast, we were called to go outside and run. Then we rushed out together and found out everything had already been torn down by shock waves from the blasts.
China Earthquake Network Center says the magnitude of the shock waves measured between 2 and 3 points the force of small earthquakes. Smoke still billowed Thursday. Many are concerned about exposure to toxic smoke, not knowing exactly what was stored in the warehouses. The second explosion had already killed several firefighters first called to the scene.
Very worried, very worried. At this moment, we don't know what chemical is in the air. We are worried it may be toxic and harmful in the future.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for all-out efforts to minimize casualties. He also promised a thorough investigation. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And turning to other news, Swedish prosecutors have dropped their investigation into sexual assault allegations against Julian Assange after the deadline for bringing charges expired. 3 of 4 sex allegations against the WikiLeaks founder that were dropped were due to expire on August 13th, 17th, and the 18th. The prosecutors say that he still faces the more grave accusation of rape, which has a 10-year expiration date. 2 women made allegations against Assange 5 years ago in Stockholm. However, no charges were brought against him because the prosecutor was unable to interrogate him after he challenged an extradition order. This was also due to the fact that he claimed political asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012. Assange fears that going to Sweden would leave him vulnerable to extradition to the U.S., where he would face charges of espionage. His requests to the Swedish government to guarantee his safety have been declined. And lastly, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter announces that he has cancer. The Carter Center in Atlanta said the former president underwent a successful procedure last week to remove a small mass from his liver. But during surgery, doctors discovered the cancer in his liver had spread to other parts of his body. The center said Carter will rearrange his schedule to undergo treatment at Emory Healthcare, and more details will be made public once doctors know more. The former president cut a visit short to Guyana in May after feeling unwell and returned to Atlanta. Now, some interesting facts about the former president. Carter defeated former President Gerald Ford to become the 39th president of the United States. He served 1 term from 1977 to 1981. Also, Carter won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his dedication to finding peaceful solutions to international conflicts. And that does it for your international news at this hour. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Due to atmospheric instability, there were sporadic showers hitting the upper parts of the nation, including the capital area, and more pop-up showers are expected in some of the inland regions until late at night. And chances of sudden showers will persist for the upper parts tomorrow, while there'll be nothing but sunshine in the southern provinces, elevating the UV index to very high levels. So for those of you in the southern regions, take the appropriate precautions. And Saturday is Liberation Day here in Korea, and tomorrow is a temporary holiday. But the weather outlook for the upcoming long holiday weekend is not looking all sunny and clear, as more isolated rain is expected for Friday, and it's going to rain all day long on Sunday here in the capital. On that note, let's take a closer look at tomorrow's temperature. Highs in Seoul will rise to 31 degrees Celsius, while Daegu and Gwangju will soar to 32, and Busan will top out at 30 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 31, while Dokdo peaks at 28. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
One of the many gems you will find in Korea Folk Village. It's a 3-day weekend, so maybe you can make time to visit that place.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for staying with us.
We'll be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.